Welcome back to What's On Tonight, a podcast with elaborate, quirky, and unpredictable conversations about TV, movies, and more. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
Tonight, we are coming to you with a very special episode. We have the one and only Alexandra Metz with us.
Hello.
We are so glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
So as you know, Alexandra plays Dr. Garcia on the Pitt, and we find you to be one of the most intriguing characters.
Ooh.
We're very excited to chat with you. And like I told you before we started recording, you're our second interview, so bear with us. We're still learning.
Absolutely. Me too.
Well, let's get started then. So when you agreed to the interview, which again, thank you so much for doing so, Mandy and I did a bit of a deep dive. We love to go down a rabbit hole, and you've got a very impressive list of guest spots on a lot of shows. And I have to say, one of my favorite shows that you've been on was your character as Dr. Dalton on How to Get Away with Murder.
Oh yeah,
that was very cool. Working with Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
We see you went to Brown, which is very impressive, by the way, and have a degree in human biology. Yeah. So aside from that, there really wasn't a lot of information about your life outside of acting. So would you mind telling us just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm from New York City. I grew up both in the city in Manhattan and upstate New York, kind of split between, city life and mountain life, country life. When my mom's job transferred us upstate when I was in first grade, and I grew up on the path to becoming a doctor. I lived my mom is from Panama, and she's an immigrant and, a single mother. So it was very, very set on making sure her daughters had all the resources possible and putting them on the path to success. So under that, she wanted us to study really hard and get into the best schools this nation has to offer. And so, I ended up going to Brown. One of my other sisters also went to Brown. And, kind of the only options growing up for our careers were being a lawyer, being a doctor. And then the third one was being an actuarian because I liked math so much. And I was like, what even is that?
That's what I was sitting here thinking. I'm like smiling like, oh yeah, cool.
For those who don't know.
I actually do know because I hate anything to do with numbers. And for whatever reason, I just happened to have looked up that word. It was something I was reading the other day.
Oh, how funny.
I think that you made the better career choice.
Yeah. I'm so happy with the one that I chose and the one that I've always been drawn towards. And I'm happy I followed my heart. An actuarian, to my limited understanding, calculates risk for insurance companies, for example, to make sure that they can make the most amount of money at these companies. So probabilities. And I liked statistics to an extent. So my mom was like, those are good career options. So in our family, my eldest sister is a lawyer. The middle sister is a doctor. And then I'm the artistic wild child who, followed her heart.
That's funny that you said that about statistics. I love statistics in and of themselves, like the idea of statistics, because as Becky said, we could both just go down rabbit holes all day long.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, I find the gray area is very interesting. And I love the idea of statistics, don't like the math behind them.
Yeah.
I loved the idea of like sitting around and reading studies where they found out, 13% of left-handed people, their favorite color is blue. How they got to those numbers, far less interesting to me.
Yeah, it definitely, I hit a wall on math. I love it. I think it's so functional, obviously. And I think it's fun as a game, as a mental game. But after a certain point, it's just not my jam.
Not me, ma'am.
Numbers make me cry. So,
oh no.
Yeah, I must stay as far away from that as I possibly can. So what did they think when you decided that you were going to not follow the path and become an actress?
Well, it was a series of challenging conversations that, my mom had spent 18 years of her life making sure that I was on the path to doing something that was stable. And I understand the intention behind that, but you can't deny what the heart wants, especially if it's well-intentioned. And I had started doing plays in college, and the way that I was talking about my work in these plays, it wasn't a menial discussion. It was really rooted in purpose and the larger stories that we get to tell as actors and the way that we can change lives. I couldn't stop talking about it. And I was very committed. I was studying all the time. And, my mom's one for studying at least. So she could understand that aspect of it, that I was committed and serious about this endeavor. So right out of college, I also got kind of lucky. I booked my first national commercial like a few months after graduating. And that took me to Buenos Aires, Argentina on a first class flight.
Nice.
So I think my mom was like, oh, she's got this.
Oh, that's great.
It's going to be fine. And, it's funny because the career is one of ups and downs. It's a real roller coaster ride. And if you don't have a backbone, you better learn to build one for yourself. So it's been a journey, and it's one that I think my mom eventually just had to come to terms with. And she saw that I can live on simple means, and I'm maintaining, my mental health, and I'm happy, and I'm surrounded by really wonderful people. I'm in community with other great artists. So you can't really fault a kid for following their dreams.
No, I have a 21-year-old, and she is, in my opinion, and I'm biased, of course, but she's a pretty good poet. It really just blew my mind because I love writing, but poetry has always been something that's just beyond me.
Yeah.
I've never been able to really encapsulate like a beautiful idea simplistically.
Yeah.
She blows me away with it, but she just graduated with a bachelor's in English. And as a parent, we wanted her to have a good work ethic.
Yep.
Beyond that, I want her to have quality of life over necessarily a lot of things, or as long as I know that she's prepared to work for whatever she wants.
Yep.
I'm sure your mom is the same as me. It's like, I just want to see that you are putting the effort into it, and you're going to be able to pay your bills. And
yep.
If that's what needs to be done, then that's a big sigh of relief.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think some parents do that for their own well-being and their own
prestige.
Exactly, that part. So I think that's really admirable as a mom. And I honestly, I don't know if the listeners can see a picture of you in conjunction while listening. I cannot believe you have a 21-year-old daughter. You look like you're in your 20s.
Thanks. You're our new favorite person.
Yeah.
Truly.
So speaking of your degree, though, one of the things that we noticed about Justin, and I also noticed about you when we were digging into your life, is what a well-rounded person you are and how diverse your experiences and your interests seem to be. And I love that. Like, I have a huge crush on lifelong learners.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that that's how you survive in this world, that you have to have a thirst for knowledge of all kinds.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I've got another podcast where I do sit down with a girlfriend of mine every episode, and we talk about an important woman from history. And my next episode is going to be on Zora Neale Hurston in person.
Oh, that's one of our dog's names.
Zora?
Yeah.
I noticed you have a Jackson too. That's my son's name.
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I already loved you before we even got on here because you love dogs, and your son's name is Jackson too.
Yes, exactly.
But at any rate, that's one of the things I noticed about Zora, is that she was much like, all the people I admire, was someone who just had a voracious desire to have as many experiences and as much knowledge as she can.
Yep.
One of the things I've noticed looking at all of the people that we've been talking about interviewing is there's so many cast members with the Pitt that have some kind of background in health, whether it's, your degree in biology. Justin was in physical therapy.
Oh, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. That's his next goal, is he wants to be a PT assistant.
Amazing.
I know, it's crazy. But anyway, do you think that it helped at all in you getting the role? Do you think that played into it? Do you think that that is coincidental, or do you think that they were actively trying to cast people who have some sort of background with medical knowledge?
That's a good question. I never even asked anyone, and it never really came up in conversations with John Wells or Noah or Scott Gemmell or even any of the casting people. It is on my IMDb, but no one asked me to divulge anything further. But I do think it helped with my feeling, used to some of the terminologies, some of the, the environment in which we're working. I've volunteered at doctor's offices when I was in high school, and then as part of my resume in order to apply to colleges. And my mom, again, had always kind of put me on the path to becoming a doctor. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll do that. And I applied for the program for liberal medical education at Brown as a high schooler, which is how it works. And I got in, It's an 8-year medical program. It's a 4-year undergrad, and then the 4 years after that are the medical school there that you get in as a high schooler. And what's great about that is kind of to your point about having a diverse background of interests and being a well-rounded person. It encourages the people who are in the program to study other things outside of the sciences so that you can bring more to your career as a doctor if you do follow through with the 8-year program. And you don't actually have to take the MCATs. You're already in medical school. So you have the opportunity to study English and poetry or, dance, like African dance I got to do. And, I got to do so many other things that had presumably nothing to do with medicine, but make me a person that can relate to so many other parts of a human being's life. And so if I were to be a doctor, I can talk to my patient about so many other things. And it's a really incredible program. It's one of the best medical schools in the nation. And a lot of my friends went through that program. So I'm in contact with some really incredible doctors around the nation, and I can vouch for every single one of them. They're all incredible human beings, well-studied in the sciences and beyond.
Well, that leads to another question. So your sister, you said, is a physician, and you've got several friends who are physicians. How do they feel about the show?
Oh my God, everyone loves it. It's really quite exciting. I mean, there's so many doctor shows out there, and this feels like the one that got it right. And to have told a story that's this accurate and to have the approval of all these physicians that I respect so deeply, it's a great feeling. It's really lovely because we're representing people who deserve to have representation on television, accurate representation. And, a lot of these doctors, especially in the ED or, for surgeons, specific to my character, they don't often have the opportunity to talk about what they do at work in such a detailed way with their family. I mean, when they get home, they often just want to, turn it off and turn on another part of the brain and not divulge all the, the challenging parts of a day, or, there's the medicine itself. There's I don't work in a 9 to 5. So what's the word for just human relations part of it,
Right.
Certainly there's human relations in acting and on sets, but there's that in medicine, and they don't want to talk about any of that stuff when they get home. They want to relax and just be with their families. And so this is, I think, allowing people to say, wow, yeah, this is what I lived through without having to tell you about my every day to day and how I survive it. Essentially is just being with family, being with friends. They can let the story speak for itself and say, I can really relate to this. And it feels amazing.
Well, that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think one of the things that Becky and I have talked about a lot is something that, well, first of all, I have seen a lot of online chatter from people in the medical industry that have backed up what you're saying, that they overwhelmingly seem to be in agreement that this is as close as any television show that they've ever seen has gotten to what the reality is. And one of the things that Becky and I've talked a lot about is that it strikes me that one of the things that's different about this format is that in any other drama about a medical emergency room, what's going on now towards the latter part of the season where you have got this active shooter situation with these mass casualties, it would be, just a very special episode maybe in that. But this, by doing 1 hour each of this shift, you get to see that these people are just experiencing trauma after trauma after trauma to their own psyche in service of trying to take care of these other people. And so they're already just so stressed. And then bam, this happens. It's really hit home to me. It's almost like a war, I can imagine. Reminded me, what you're saying reminded me of something my mother always told me about my grandfather that was in World War II and how he never, ever, ever wanted to talk about his experiences. Yeah. And in the character of Robbie, you really see somebody who is not dealing with their own trauma because it's just too much. And you can't open that burden up with and still keep going.
Exactly.
Okay. So I love that they're doing that.
Yeah.
But I have a follow-up question, a couple of listener questions about your character. Listener Kaylee Yalia, and I apologize if I've said that incorrectly, Kaylee. She is asking, how similar are you to Dr. Garcia? And has there been anything hard to separate or create for the character?
It's a kind of a running joke on set that I'm the least like the character that I play on this show. Everyone's kind of playing a version of themselves, and then they're like, "What? Alex is like just really acting a whole other person. So I think that there are maybe similarities, and there are things that I learned from playing Garcia, like a stillness and a resoluteness that I have within me, of course. So that's, why I can play that, but it's not necessarily my vibe on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I love stepping into that stuff because it's so powerful. She's such a badass that I'm learning constantly and just delivering the news and delivering knowledge that is, for Dr. Garcia, undeniable. Even though doctors often disagree with one another in those spaces, and they disagree in terms of what the best way to take care of a patient may be, I love that she doesn't vacillate. I think it's a really good quality. I am a Gemini. I vacillate quite often. I look at all sides of things. Are you a Gemini?
I'm a Cancer. I don't fit into any of the mold of what a Cancer is supposed to be. But I am very much, I get lost in the details a lot.
Yeah. I'm always thinking about, okay, well, you talk about rabbit holes a lot on this podcast, and that's me all day long. I think I'm constantly learning, and then I want to look at the opposite side of the coin constantly. And maybe there's a point when Garcia did that when she was in training and learning, about different procedures. But she doesn't vacillate when it comes time to saving a life.
Yeah, she's not a waffler.
Not a waffler.
You have some great one-liners that you jump in with.
Yeah, you do. I've laughed more than once.
Fun.
I have another follow-up question from listener Emily Zapata, and she is asking, what's something that surprised you about Dr. Garcia?
Ooh, I might say that I think it's a little surprising how she'll blur the professional line, in front of others. Let's get into it.
We are going to get into that.
There's a whole segment coming up.
Yes.
Yeah. It's all good though, I promise.
I think it's really, I think she's so secure in her position at work and the way in which she handles business and, accomplishes her surgery, and that she feels comfortable, hitting on Santos, saying some things in moments when it's like, interesting. You should be focused on the patient, as Dr. Robbie says at one point. But she's not thrown by that. She's not, it's not phasing her by any means.
Well, that actually kind of leads into the next question. So there's obviously something going on with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Santos. And we have a question from listener Demolition Dessert, which is one of the greatest names I've ever heard. Same. Yeah. So your character has already become a sapphic icon. So what are your thoughts on her LGBTQA status?
I love it. There's nothing else to say about that. I'm queer myself, and I feel so blessed to be representing a badass queer Latina in such a top position. And that's not meant. That's top position, meaning in the hospital.
Hey, man. Between those two, I honestly don't know which way that would go. I think it'd be a trade-off.
That'd have to be a serious conversation about the relationship before it started.
Certainly, this is just the first day, so we've met each other, let alone, had any conversations outside of medicine. But yeah, I think I'm honored to play Garcia in this light of being free and powerful and fully herself.
I love it.
Speaking of Santos, if you had ever listened to our podcast, you know that I am Team Santos all day long. So I am basically have adopted Santos as my other daughter. So I need to know what your intentions are towards my child. But I also, and we would like to know, is there any hot gossip that you can give us about what's going to happen between those two in the next couple of episodes?
Okay, I can't give you any hot goss. Sorry, ladies.
Oh, man, worth a shot.
You gotta always ask. You never know. But I think Garcia's intentions are, for the most part, good. I think that she's of the mentor ilk. I think she is, somewhat judgmental. She's discerning, I'll say, not judgmental, but discerning in that space of who can cut it here, who is a possible future teammate, who we can count on in the surgery space. But also, Santos is undeniably beautiful, and she's also a badass. And what's not attractive about that?
I have a theory. You're free to deny it, or
she already answered it.
No, I'm just going to throw it out there, the full theory. I have a theory that they know each other they knew each other before she started on day one. And that for whatever reason, Garcia has told Santos to keep that on the QT because she doesn't want anyone else to know, because I find it a little like odd that it just seems a bit out of character for somebody as controlled as Garcia to just start flirting with an intern on day one. That just tell me with your eyes.
I'm looking away from the screen for those who are listening. I don't know, but I like it.
I have enjoyed debunking this theory with Mandy every episode that it comes up. And you said something earlier when you were discussing Santos. It's like, well, they just met. And inside, I am cheering. Like, I told you, Mandy. I told you, Mandy.
I'm holding out. My mom told me that if I am right about this, then she's going to need me to go and buy her lottery tickets, because that would be the most amazing piece of detective work.
I want to cut.
I'm just looking at context cues. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. I'm actually about to rewatch the show, and I want to look at it through that lens and see if it tracks.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay. All right. Well, get back to me.
Message us and let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
Because Mandy would be so happy, but I'm still saying no.
Anyway. All right.
So you play an assertive, confident character who is obviously very secure and cares absolutely not what anyone thinks. So, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what is it like to play that role, especially as a woman?
Ooh. I mean, it's really, really special, really beautiful. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like that in my day-to-day. I don't have that quality completely in my bones. I mean, especially as an actor, there's the you want to show up and do a good job, and there's a quality that's not as how shall I say, decisive, because when you're acting, especially, there's so many auditions where you don't know what you should be going for. You're telling a story, you have only a certain amount of information and the sides that you're given, and then you want the job ultimately, especially if it's a well-told story. So there's a quality to being an actor, and for me personally, that's like, what's the right choice? And that's just not the decisiveness of Garcia is something that I really would love to learn more about and be inspired by. But God, playing a strong woman, it feels so effortless at times. Like it's just a switch that I turn on and I step into. It's really highly supported by the dialogue and the text that we're given. Shout out to the writers. They're so wonderful. They make it really easy for me to step into the role of competence and power and strength, and all those things it's fun to embody. And it's also like, there's a moment where I kind of step out of myself, but then into another part of myself that I don't often tap into. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And, now that we're on the off season, I'm like I don't really have a lot of spaces where I get to practice that. I'm mostly home, and I'm not trying to throw my weight around at home. It's a really chill setting. So luckily.
How much are you online? Like, I noticed that I think you've done a great job of like keeping a lot of your private life out of the media, but how much do you personally get online? Have you looked at any of the chatter about this storyline, what people are saying about your character?
I have seen some, because people send stuff to me, and then you get like the fourth person in a week to send you the same link, and you're like, okay, let me just check it out, I guess.
I bet. Yeah.
I try not to look too much into that stuff. I think it's really cool how invested people are, and how excited they are by the story and all the storylines being told throughout the story. But yeah, I'm trying to get offline. And it's funny because you think that I'm not sharing my private life. Sometimes I wonder if I share too much.
Not at all. We'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought that up is because my mom and we were again talking about the character, because I am so protective of the character of Santos because she reminds me so much of me when I was a kid, which my mom thinks is funny because she said my maiden name was Bro, and my mom says, man, that girl is such a bro, Santos meaning. But I'm kind of hard on Garcia because I do feel like, you know, that again, I've got this whole pet theory that they're girlfriends and that she just told her to keep quiet, but that she's kind of quietly encouraged her to maybe be a little bit more aggressive than she's ready to be because of her experience. At any rate, my mom and I were talking about this, and she said, well, you know, Mandy, she kind of basically accused me of having a little bit of internal bias and saying, what if that was a male character? And I had to stop and think about it. And I don't think she's wrong. I think I would. If this were a storyline where it were a male doctor or a female intern, I don't know that I would have immediately felt as like she was aggressive or overstepping or what have you.
Yeah, hardly anyone would have batted an eyelash. Exactly.
Right. Which made me really mad at myself because that's something that I feel really, really passionately about, is much more direct than a lot of people. And I think I do it deliberately because I think that is something that happens in this world. We are not encouraged to be decisive. We are called bitches.
Yep. If you're not smiling while you deliver information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I guess what I was asking is, do you feel like there is any sexism that you have seen in some of the feedback from people online about this character?
In the limited amount that I've seen, I was actually surprised with the lack of sexism and
that's great.
Actually, I mean, I think some people are like, "Oh, Garcia is wrong for that," but it's like, you know, wrong for what I saw was wrong for, you know, kind of standing up for Langdon or not really having much to say when Santos was like, "I have this information, what do I do with it?"
Like valid criticism, not around your gender.
Exactly.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm very, very glad to hear that.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I only saw what I saw, but it did give me hope as well.
Well, cool.
Well, since, you know, we really started getting into covering the show, we've been, you know, following you on social media, and we both want you to know that we completely admire everything that you're standing up for. Mm-hmm. You're standing up for what's right. And in such a public career, I know that can be scary. Yep. Well, no, I know, like we have about 150 listeners. Let me rephrase that. And we love every single one of you listeners. Thank you. But I would imagine that in a public career, it's scary to speak your mind in general, but in a public career,
it's a risk,
you know, to put yourself out there like that and to be so open about your feelings as to what's going on. It's very impressive, and we appreciate it. And, you know, these are frustrating times with what's going on in our current administration. And, you know, I'm a biracial woman in a biracial marriage. And there are things happening that frankly just piss me off, but also worry me.
Yep.
And, you know, as a person of color who is also in a biracial relationship, am I correct about that?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. You know, do you have any thoughts you want to share on current events? And, you know, how do you protect your mental health from, you know, we're joking, going down rabbit holes and not losing your mind at the absolute insanity that's happening?
It has been a trip, being alive in this time. Working backwards, protecting my mental health. Honestly, my husband and I talk about current events, you know, a lot. And then we'll kind of have to remind each other, okay, we need to take a break. We're on our phones constantly. We're reading every update, and we're going to get the updates regardless of if we get them the moment they come out or, you know, a day or two later. So we try to keep balance and protect one another from going overboard. But we're undoubtedly affected, and God, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, there's so much that I could talk about and divulge. I mean, even in terms of like our families and having family members who are MAGA, or if they don't consider themselves to be MAGA, they are Trump supporters. And it's like having a conversation with loved ones without being able to really have a balanced dialogue, because now truth is getting obscured left and right. It's really hard to tell for some people to get to the bottom of what's true. It's just a really tricky time. And I am not the kind of person who can have these conversations without getting emotional, because I'm so affected. Because history precedes us. We should have learned these lessons by now. There's so much human potential for good, and to see it being wasted in so many ways all over the world, but then also in our nation, it's just devastating. Yeah, I don't know. We could talk about this for days and days. Honestly, like ever since the election, we've talked about it almost every day. And to an extent, it feels like, this administration, I don't get the sense that they care about the citizens of this nation. And it's a lot of like pulling wool over eyes and doing these, making big pocket money and to usurp power. I mean, I'm reading this book right now, called On Tyranny, and it kind of is about the 20 lessons of how societies and nations have found themselves in tyrannical times. And it again, like history precedes itself. We have history books for a reason. That's why education is so important. This is why
which is why they want to take it away.
That's why they want to take it away. Break it down. Yeah.
Have you ever heard the quote? And it's attributed to Mark Twain, but I don't know if it's ever been proven that he said it, but it was something along the lines of history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I love history. History is a big passion of mine. And I just recently read that quote and it really resonated with me, because that's part of the problem, is that whenever you try to make the comparisons and say, look, there is evidence to say that this is what's going on, people will say, oh, they'll roll their eyes and say, oh, he's not Hitler. He's, this isn't 1935. Well, it's not, but, did you ever see the movie Evita? Do you know anything about Juan Perón?
Yeah, Argentina.
Right. The Descamisados, even his follower, like the MAGA movement and all of it. It's like there was a playbook. And they're playing it, and they're doing everything in their power to turn this country into an official oligarchy. I'm surprised that you have MAGA relatives, honestly.
Me too.
It's crazy. We have this assumption, we're here in Tennessee. Yeah. Tennessee is basically a bellwether for what they're trying to accomplish throughout the rest of the country. We are where the ground zero was. Like, we have a supermajority. They put a lot of money, outside money, I should say, into the state to successfully gerrymander it. And we have a supermajority, which means that they can shove through anything that they want. They recently passed a law here that makes it illegal for an elected representative to vote against Donald Trump's immigration policies.
Yeah.
Oh, how is this possible? I don't understand. I mean,
because they have the supermajority. They have every branch of our government here, and that's what they want to do across the entire country.
But isn't this unconstitutional? And same for the election happening in Wisconsin right now. How is Elon Musk able to write $1 million checks to buy votes?
I mean, I have a lot of hope because, again, I do read a lot of history, and there are things I try to look for the places to be hopeful. You know, Heather Cox, I read her blog almost every single day. There are other people whose intelligence I admire that I look to, that they're not panicking. They're concerned and worried, but that's where I get a lot of my sense of peace, and also in looking for opportunities to double down and just really get to work. That's why I started my other podcast about powerful women, and I've been volunteering with a local shelter here that is LGBTQIA affirming for young people who are experiencing homelessness. Things like that are what I have been doing. And in that vein, Becky, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this. We noticed that you have your acting troupe that you have founded.
The Public Assembly.
Yeah. If you want to talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not really politically motivated, but it definitely is a place where people can come and share their truth and develop stories. We're very community driven. So basically, it's really cool. It's absolutely a passion project. I'm one of the founding members, as you said, and we've been going strong for 7 years. Actually, this week was our 7-year anniversary. And basically,
congratulations.
Thank you. We put on shows once a month. And basically anyone who's been in the audience once before is eligible to submit a premise that they pitch. Yeah, based on a theme that was shouted out by the audience members from the previous month. So,
wow.
At the end of every show, we're like, give me your theme ideas, and people are shouting, and then we kind of huddle up and decide. So last month, the theme was, it's only okay when you're a kid. And next show is going to be Vigil is the theme for next show. And we get so many amazing submissions from people from all walks of life who want to tell stories. And sometimes the experience levels are super vast as well. I mean, we have writers from television shows, feature writers, and we have people who've never written before either. And we really try to keep a diverse set of rules, a diverse set of artists involved in all capacities. So it's been a place where amidst everything that's happening in the world, we always have this to come back to, and people, can tell stories that are politically motivated. They can tell stories that are escapism, and give people a place to, release emotions that might have been pent up because of what we're living through in society right now. But I definitely, it's such a boon in my life to have this space of really intelligent artists. And there's people in that community who are, writers on television shows or directors on television shows. And it doesn't matter. Everyone is so about learning and teaching and, inspiring others and giving people the opportunity to use their voice.
Yeah, I guess that's what made me think of that specifically when I was thinking about things that you could do to keep your mental health going in times like this, is that when I was reading about it, I thought, what a gift for those people, because that's an opportunity for everybody to get together and remember that there is beauty in the world.
Oh, yes.
That your voice matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right on. I mean, after the fires here in California, we were supposed to have a show that month, and basically we had to take a temperature of all our members and our audience to see if this was something we wanted to move forward with, because it is a very energetic, active month of creation and reiterating of ideas. Like, people are writing and rewriting constantly based on notes that whoever's curating that month or helping to produce the show that month is giving notes. And it takes a lot of mental capacity to focus on this act of creation, especially in the setting that we've established. And so when the fires happened, we were like, do people have the bandwidth to do this, or should we cancel the show? And in the end, we all, discussed and took a poll and said, no, I think it would be good for everyone to be in the same room together and recognizing that, there's horrific stuff happening in the world and in our very, adjacent communities. All of us who live here in Los Angeles, we know at least 1 to 5 people who lost their homes, who lost everything that they had. But to be able to come together in a room and laugh and cry and tell stories, kind of what we were always meant to be doing. I mean, around the proverbial campfire. These are the places where we can heal.
I love that. And it's not the large scale that what you do is, but, Mandy and I, we both work full-time jobs, and we don't make any money for this podcast, but I use this as our way of escape. And, there are moments when, it's one of the most beautiful things about the Pitt is you all don't shy away from stuff that's really happening in today's world. And it can be heavy. And sometimes it leads us to a heavy conversation. And we got our first bad review where a listener was like, I tried, but they talk too much about abortion or whatever's going on in the world today. And I want to watch this show and listen as an escape. And I sent it to a wonderful group of women podcasters that I'm involved with. And one of them came back to me and said, okay, now you're doing something right.
Yep.
And it's softened the blow and made us feel like, because your first thing is to crawl back up and not speak your mind and say anything. But anyway, it is great to have an escape. And then, that's our podcast for us. And I'm glad that what you do also provides that safe space for other people to be able to do and say whatever it is that they feel like they need to do or say at that time. That's amazing.
I think it's important that we have these conversations, and people are always free to check out and say, look, I don't want to talk about this right now. I don't want to be
Yeah, it's
politically
okay.
involved. I mean,
Right.
like, I have opinions about people who check out of politics completely. But that is a choice. That's a human choice.
Sure.
If you need to take care of yourself in that way, but you can't always, absolve yourself or say that like you're not affected by it, because ultimately we are all affected. We're all in this together. So yeah, to your point, I mean, the person who has the negative feedback, it does prove that you're onto something. I ruffled some feathers in talking about the post-election times and how disappointing it was to know that family members voted in this way. And the fact that it led to some hard conversations, it wasn't favorable, but thank God it did. Like, thank God I said something and we can start to have dialogue. And it's not perfect yet. It's not ideal in my mind, but it's something. It's moving the needle in a direction that I think needs to happen.
Well, that's part of why we wanted to bring all of that up, is because we were admiring of the fact that you were taking that risk, because it's one thing for us to speak up. It's hard for us. I mean, not me, because my mouth gets me in trouble all the time. But, when we started this podcast, like that was one of the conversations that we had to have is, do we want to go there? We're brand new. Do we want to alienate people, especially around here?
Surrounded.
We talked about it and we were like, no. And that's what kind of was a little surprising to me about that feedback, is that, but this is such a strange show to pick to be escapist fair, because every episode they're talking about really important things that are going on in this world. That's why we decided, no, we're not going to shy away from that stuff. We'll try to keep, the Angry Carrot's name to a minimum. We'll try to, not bring him up as much as possible, but we cannot have honest conversations about this stuff. We wouldn't feel good about what we were doing if we didn't get into the fray that way. And so we just appreciate the risk that you're taking by doing that. And if our opinion means anything, don't stop, because
Thank you.
It's so needed. I mean, people, that don't have, I was going to say glamorous. I know you probably don't look at your own life and think, oh, this is super glamorous, because I know it's a lot of hard work.
I'm covered in dog hair.
Same. But, you get to work in creative spheres and do things that, a lot of people don't get to do. And most people in your circumstance would go out of their way to be as coy as possible about their politics. And so we just really appreciate you putting it on the line like that. Yeah.
Thank you. It's funny because sometimes I wonder, like, I honestly want to spend less time online, less time on Instagram. But there is an aspect of it that I really enjoy, being in community with people that are from all around the world, all around the nation. I mean, we met through Instagram. Yeah. We met through Carly, who runs the Pitt fan page. And
hey, Carly.
Hey, Carly. And
she's amazing.
I love that aspect of this app. And yet I also know it's really toxic. So finding a balance. Sometimes it feels like I'm just sharing to a bunch of people who agree with me already. So like, what does that do? What good does that do? We're just proliferating information in a vacuum. How do we reach outside of those spaces?
But it's community. And that's what I guess I hope you're hearing, is that we are here in the middle of it.
I appreciate that.
I used to be a little bit more, because so much of my family is MAGA, that I did used to try to be a little bit more cautious about it. But after this last election, what I realized is that the people out there that are feeling despair, those are the people that I care about now.
Yeah.
Because I am at a point in my life where I can exert a certain amount of privilege to say, look, I am a middle-class, middle-aged, cis-het white woman, and this is bullshit. Probably not going to affect me. I'm not having children anymore. Thank God my son is about to be out of the public school system. A lot of this is not going to affect me, but I'm not going to shut up about it, because I have several friends who have trans children, friends who are LGBTQIA, a ton of friends who are immigrants or the children of immigrants. And if you have a voice, you should keep using it. And I just think that when I'm like you and I'm thinking, what is this doing? Like everybody they've already made up their mind, but I just try to picture the people out there that need to feel like they're not alone. Yeah. And I think that's what you do.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you are a voice for them. So
yeah. And I think it's easy for people to forget that our voices, there's something, we can lose the opportunity to share our voices like that. They take it for granted. And if we stop using them, that is a possibility.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it just broke my heart in this last election. A majority just did not show up to vote. The only reason these people have the power they do is because of apathy, and I don't even think it's that people don't care. They've just bought into this idea that it doesn't matter. And if all of those people who believed it didn't matter showed up and voted, this would be a completely different country. Because as I said, I love history, and history does they always fall. Every single time regimes fall.
Every great nation has. Yeah. And not that we wish that for our own nation, but certainly things need to change.
Keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially when it sucks.
Especially.
Yeah. But
yeah, and it's nice, as like I said, as a biracial person, Mandy was screenshotted a couple of things that you posted and sent to me, and it just made me feel kinship, I guess. Yeah. And to know that there's other people with the same worries, fears, hopes, dreams, the whole nine. It's just it's nice. Yeah. And we appreciate it, and all we can do is say what we say. And my mom always says, if you touch one person a day, then you've done something right. And so
my mom says, if you touch one person a day, you can go to jail.
But
oh, good. Yeah, she's not wrong.
Well, I know we've kept you a long time, but I want to ask, you talked a lot about your project, which is amazing. Is there anything else that in the works that you want to tell us about? And can you share where our listeners can find you?
Y'all can find me at Metzaball Soup.
We love that name.
We were talking about that before we got on here. Like, that is an amazing Instagram name.
Thank you. My last name is Metz, and I love matzo ball soup. I have Jewish heritage from Poland, and my grandfather and I used to make matzo ball soup, and he would come visit me in LA. So,
oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. And I don't have anything coming up yet. Hopefully I'll have more to report on soon.
You could just let us know exactly what's going to happen in the last 2 episodes of the Pitt.
It's so funny.
Cut that part out, okay? We won't tell anyone else.
Oh my gosh. No. It's funny because I don't even remember at this point. I'm on the journey with the audience.
Really?
I'm on the ride, and so just I'm taken aback by everything that's happening. I mean, there's so much that's on the page, and then there's so much that's being brought to life, and all these little micro moments on screen that I just I'm just as committed to the ride as any other audience member.
Yeah, we can't wait to go back and rewatch as a binge, because I think it's going to be, we talked about that last episode. I think it's going to be a completely different experience, sitting down and knowing how it ends, and then going back and just watching everything progress.
Yeah.
One sit. Well, I don't know about one sitting. I don't know if I can do 15 hours.
15 hours. People are talking about
I can do 15 hours. There's nothing I love more than watching TV and talking about it, which is why I wanted to start a podcast. But yeah, we're going to do a season 1 recap. So
cool.
We may hit you with any questions or anything.
Feel free.
Or Mandy's lottery winnings if she's right about you and Santos. But anyway, I'm so sorry. So back to where we can find you.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So basically I'm just on Instagram. I don't go on any of the other apps. But I'll keep that account alive, even if I'm not always the most active on it.
Cool. Mandy, anything else?
No, man. I'm just thrilled to talk to you, Alexandra.
This
is really
amazing.
Fun. Yeah.
So sweet. Y'all are lovely.
I was a little scared because I was seeing Garcia when you agreed. And as soon as you came on, I was just like, oh. Yeah. So it's,
I'll tell you who Garcia reminds me of is that when I was in kindergarten here in Tennessee, I don't know if it's like this in California or New York, but kindergartners get out earlier than everybody else. And my brother was in 4th grade, and I got out, and my parents couldn't come pick me up. So I had to go wait in his classroom. And he had this teacher named Mrs. Hollingsworth, the most stern teacher in the entire school. Everybody was terrified of her. And I was always really short, and she was a very tall, thin lady, seemed like she was about a mile long. And I just remember being in her room, and I had to go to the bathroom. And my brother was like, don't ask, do not go up and ask. And I did. And just the look that she had on her face looked like it was, like I said, like a mile up. And she goes, no. And everybody in the class started laughing. That's the look on Garcia's face.
Oh my God. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It is. She's very like, you don't mess with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you have someone additional to channel into your
Yes.
characters, Mrs.
Yes.
Hollingsworth. So
yeah.
wherever you are, thank you, Mrs. Hollingsworth.
This has been great. We really appreciate it.
It has. Thank you so much. And we'll post a link to your Instagram so listeners can follow you if they're not already. I can't imagine anyone isn't, but so thank you with what's going on, and you're welcome back here anytime.
Thank you.
Was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you both.
That wraps up our interview with the amazing Alexandra Metz. We'll be back soon to continue our coverage of the Pitt.
Woo!
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
And I'm Alexandra Metz.
We'll catch you next week when we grab the remote and see what's on tonight. Bye.
Bye.